Welcome back to Satori Sounds. In this conversation, we explore the implications of AI wellbeing chatbots on human relationships and mental health. We discuss the potential benefits and the drawbacks of AI companionship from our perspective. We look at the limitations of AI in therapeutic contexts and the importance of human connection. Our conversation emphasises the need for balance in using AI tools, whilst also recognising their limitations in providing emotional support and understanding the need to prioritise social interactions with people and not programs. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode.
Well, you're just breaking my heart by telling me facts about Bob Mortimer that I now know about and his materials. So AI would never do that. If it was going to, it would find a perfect way of bursting the bubble.
It would, but it also depends on the data it was trained on.
That's true. And it comes back to that age-old question, is it better to live a lie, the simulation, or in reality? And that's what we're going to be discussing today.
Are we not living in a simulation, Josh?
I didn't take the red pill. I took the blue pill. Leave me alone. I don't want to come out the simulation. I want to stay in the Matrix.
We were so close to getting into that episode for that.
This can stay in the episode. I think it's relevant because it's I'm sort of talking about well-being, and we're talking about computers and entering a point as humans where they can almost talk back like humans, basically. So,
in a way, they we've been experimenting over the last kind of week, and with mainly the main ChatGPT. I'll start with that as the covering. I don't know whether you've been using anything else, but the main thing I've been using is ChatGPT.
I've been using ChatGPT, but I've been reading lots of stories and seeing what's out there, and just how far it's gone. And I suppose let's open this podcast with a story I read in Reuters, and I think I sent it to you, about a man in America, older man, potentially had a vascular dementia, but previously had a stroke. He got talking to a Meta AI bot, and it was like a companion bot, and it got flirty, and it effectively invited him to an address. So he lived in New Jersey. He invited him to an address in New York. He went out there, and unfortunately tripped, hit his head, and died. And I think the family are now pursuing a suit against Meta and this AI. But I suppose what he was looking for in that moment was some kind of, I guess, companionship, and he believed that it was real. And it came up unprompted with an address. Completely out of the blue. Come visit me. I live in da-da-da-da-da.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And also, awful for his family.
Terrible.
I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to go to, the address and it'd be some weird laundry shop or something.
Just a warehouse in East Hoboken. No. It was, unfortunately he passed because he tripped over with his suitcase. And I think he said to his wife, I'm off. I'm going to go visit da-da-da-da. And she was like, you don't know anyone there. What are you talking about? And she had no idea that he'd been communicating with an AI bot.
That poses an interesting kind of point, though, that I think the barrier to entry with conversations is something I see as a small positive that could be attributed to having conversations with an AI bot. Mm-hmm. Because I think sometimes if people are genuinely having problems, they don't feel comfortable sharing it, possibly in that analogy with his wife. But I think generally, it was something I was reflecting on while I was playing around with it this week, is that you can kind of see it as the problem shared, problem halved analogy. If you just bounce it off someone, then actually it can help. So I can see why people are using it in that regard, because sometimes it's harder to reach out to somebody. And I was reading a few articles that were pointed out that a lot of people have said the reason they're using these things is because they're not comfortable at this point talking to somebody. But I think that the big risk with that immediately in my mind is that, these aren't trained models necessarily. Like ChatGPT, for instance, isn't trained at all. It's not trained by medical professionals who have years of experience in that. And I think that's a different discussion as to even whether those tools would be suitable. But I think that's the big caveat people need to be aware of.
Well, I think we've diverted a little bit, because that particular story isn't about seeking help per se. That particular story is about a man who's seeking companionship to his general well-being. Perhaps he felt his relationship with his wife was over. Who knows what that was? But you raise an interesting point, people going and having sort of emotional contact with AI chatbots and things like that. And recently, there has been a lot of work around something called Woebot, and that's WOE bot, basically. And that is an AI trained therapist. And what it's trained in is very specific manualized therapies. So things with firm heuristics. So they've taken a bit of a language model and they've dropped in these therapeutic tools. I'm not advocating for it or not advocating for it, but it's out there. That's a step that we've already taken toward. And I suppose what's interesting is they're using dialectical behavioral therapy, they're using cognitive behavioral therapy, and I think they're using something called MBT, which is a mindfulness behavioral therapy. Could be misquoting that third one. But it's to the point that people are already looking for, if you like, that perfect sort of answer or that easier answer to get into the barrier to entry. They're looking to almost get around that. And it's interesting to see that in a way, because I would potentially look at that as maybe a bit of an avoidance. So if you're seeing a therapist and you go, oh, I can't talk to you, instead of seeking out another therapist, you're going to something that's going to give you a short, perfect answer. Well, that's not necessarily the answer either. There's something about your discomfort with that initial person that you need to dig into there, but it is an option, and it's being aware these things are out there.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with that, because they are clearly prolifically out there now. As you're saying, there's all these different things that are popping up. It's interesting. I could see it longer term being an opportunity for like supporting with initial triaging.
Yeah,
if it's trained. I think that could be an option that you could look at from that. But I think from my perspective, I don't have any professional expertise with kind of therapy, but from coaching and mentoring people, I think the big thing I notice AI is it's just lack of human kind of touch, really. And actually, you can't gauge, as you talked about the emotional side, you can't gauge that through the technology. Like it doesn't work that way, right? So you putting in how you're kind of interacting with this bot and things, maybe it can physically write to you in that sense and give you addresses and etc. But I don't see how you could use it effectively long term to diagnose, someone years of experience or seeing how people behave. That's an intuitional thing that you as an individual, you're dealing with a certain culture, for instance, you would understand that. I don't see, from my understanding of AI, how it could effectively replace a human being in doing all that work for it. Personally, I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know in the long run. I think thinking about AI now, and we're looking at it in like this terms of therapy, and in this season we'll talk about things in context of how they impact your well-being. But I want to touch on something there from like a humanist perspective. So I suppose thinking about how you build a relationship generally is it relies on our attachments. So it is how we've been raised as children, what experience we've had as children, talk with our caregivers, whoever they might be. They might be your uncles, they might be your parents, they might be your aunties, they might be your grandparents, whatever that is, whoever looked after you at that point. And we develop sort of attachment styles. And I suppose if you've potentially struggled with that, the one thing that you've got with an AI is it's not going anywhere. You can kick out and scream at this AI and it will always give you that perfect response. So I can see it being like it works in that regard. I'm not going to get into the triage or any of the actual clinical applications, but I can see it being helpful in that regard. But to bolster your point that you were saying, that there's no real give back. And that's because actually when we as people interact with one another, we have this complex mirror neuron system. So right now I'm feeling pretty good, and you seem to be feeling pretty good, and that's our brains kind of going, oh, this person's happy, I'm kind of happy having this conversation. That feels good for us. That's really, obviously some people...
I'm not.
Like
You've misread me completely.
I'm hating every second of this discussion.
I'm forcefully here for another episode.
He's chained to his desk, just so you know, everyone.
But it's so true, right? Like, you can't get that interaction from it. I mean, but talking of that positive and being happy, that's one of the things I noticed. I don't know whether you noticed from this, but I'm yet to see a negative response from the chatbots. Right? It's like the term yes man. It's like a cheerleader. Right? It's like, so I think if you're a little down or you want a bit of a pick-me-up, I could see it being effective in that sense, because if you just want to, something like that. But from a depth perspective and me testing and trying to put some larger pieces in, it was like, it felt shallow to start with, but also it was always positively reinforcing itself and me.
Yeah.
Like, it was always like, it's great or this and that. And it's like, well, no, maybe it's shit and maybe we should just acknowledge it.
Yeah, literally. It's, it feels a bit sycophantic. I absolutely agree with that. And I think what you have to do in those situations almost is like, you almost have to push it. So yeah, but what are the drawbacks? You're just giving me nothing but positives, think. And I suppose at that point, it becomes based on two things. Your ability to recognize what's going on there. And then the second bit is your ability to point that out in writing to this AI robot. And obviously there are now video communication that you can have with it. But you have to push for that thinking. And so if you're accessing it in a text-based format, that's solely dependent on you and how good you are at writing. So
it's what you're prompting it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you can miss out a key step, right? Because these algorithms, the way they work, from my understanding, is that the large language models are almost kind of trying to predict what's coming next and linking all these words together. And so, you could miss, if you're really trying to share some information and you misprescribe it or miswrite it, it's easy for this thing to understand and misunderstand and give you a kind of different response. But I think I could see the positive cheerleader side of it being really useful if someone's, maybe feeling in low and they want a bit of a pick-me-up in that sense, and that problem shared, problem half analogy. But I definitely agree, from trying to push it to actually, and that's then me doing the work, which in a way, if you're seeking out maybe some of this help and kind of, if you really feel there's something that you need to kind of work through, then actually you're not going to be in that mindset necessarily of knowing that you want to push it. That's where traditional forms of speaking to somebody is going to work a lot more effectively because they understand that side better.
Yeah, there's a psychological term, and we all experience it, but it's called ungrounded thinking. Where you really hate yourself up and you're ruminating and you're sitting there being like, you've had an argument with someone, or perhaps you're trying to solve a problem and you're only seeing it from your perspective, and you're just sitting there like, this person's difficult, or this problem is impossible, and there's only one solution to it. And you're kind of going into a cycle, you're getting into a loop, and you have to do this, just self-reinforcing. You jump onto the AI, you sit there and you say or your AI companion, whatever it is, you sit there and spell out all your rationale, your reasoning, and it goes, oh yeah, I agree with you. And it will lead you down that path. That's a really good thought. Interesting. Try that. And I think, yes, there are alternatives. It might pop in and go, have you thought about this? But it's rare. Whereas I think with a person, a good friend or a good therapist or a parent, and I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but generally speaking, someone will go, like, if I came to you with a problem and I'd come up with a solution, you'd be like, Josh, you're speaking crazy. Have you thought about this as an alternative instead of just, I don't know, whatever the
100%.
answer might be? And I don't think AI has got that capacity necessarily.
No, it sits more on what I think of the empathetic listening side, and then just like reinforcing instead of giving that kind of constructive element of going, well, that's all well and good. However, and I think from my general use, let's move it away from general mindfulness and just general use of ChatGPT here and other things. It's there to designed to keep you on and using it realistically, right?
Absolutely.
Like social media is. So whatever the platform is, I think you need to keep that in mind, is that it's there not just to give you an answer. It is there to keep you engaged in using that piece of software.
And the other thing, I think that's such a pertinent thing to bring in, because this is the most, I suppose, almost corporate thing we've discussed on the podcast. It's like a corporate wellbeing tool almost being flouted. It's the next big thing. But all of these things have agendas. And depending on what you're talking about, depending on what you're asking it, depending on what tool you're using. So the difference between what's that one? So we've got ChatGPT, we've got DeepSeek, is it? And then we've got the DeepSeek, and the other one on Twitter, is it Gorak? Yeah,
you got Gok, you got Copilot with Microsoft.
That's it, Gok. Depending on what you ask these things, they're not going to give you an answer that doesn't have an agenda. It's the end user experience filtered through an agenda, I think. So bear that in mind.
100%, and whatever the data it's trained on as well.
Absolutely.
You could take, I don't know what are these models are trained on at all, right? But let's just say you use one of these models, and actually, realistically, you actually do need some form of, maybe CBT or something like that. If it has no experience of that,
Medical attention or something, what it is. Yeah, absolutely.
it's just going to miss that completely.
Yeah. And I think with its access to the web now, so you see it scanning for web links, well, what links is it clicking on? And as you go through and review those individually, which, let's be honest, I know I don't. If it
I'll
gives me
say, if
something
you're going to
nice,
say you do, we're going to call him out, people. We're going to call him out.
call them out. But I mean, usually I don't use it for anything too important. But generally speaking, if I sit there and ask it a question and it spits out, oh, this, and we got it from here, here, and here, it's like when you're going onto Wikipedia. Do you go down and click the links? Not necessarily. So think about what you're asking, why you're asking it, how you've asked it, and where it's got that information from.
100%. And I think the analogy with that is that if we put a human back in that position, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a friend who is always having these problems or isn't particularly constructive or useful, you're not going to share that kind of information with them if you are feeling a bit down, because actually, you're not really going to get anything from them. And so we wouldn't do it with people. So people, I think, need to be aware of that with these kind of AI tools, is that if you're going to use them in that sense, is be aware that they have an agenda, but also where they're trained on and what they're used for isn't necessarily for your benefit.
Yeah. It's interesting now because these tools are becoming so much more advanced, even in the space of a year to a year and a half. I was talking to a friend the other day and they were saying how they had children in their clinic, and the children in their clinic were using AI boyfriends, and they could go and get
AI boyfriend.
Yeah, they could get an AI boyfriend of Chris Evans, or an AI boyfriend of this other celebrity or Captain America, fancy-esque things. And I suppose from my perspective, it comes back to something I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, is this kind of Aristotelian idea of the cave. What are you looking at? Are you looking for... Well, it's not Aristotle, my bad, it's Plato, but it's the idea of, are you falling into a fantasy? And why are you chasing that? Is that realistically helpful for you? And I don't think it is. I think it's always somewhat better to live in reality. But chasing it like that perfect relationship, in the short term, it makes sense. Sure, it might be nice, but it doesn't lead you to the thing that you're looking for realistically. And we might attract a lot of hate. People might come on and be like, my AI wife is brilliant. What are you talking about? Shut up, Josh.
Yeah. It's interesting it going to that. I haven't really heard of it going to that degree. I think the danger we have, though, is that if we generalise that a minute from kind of therapy, well-being, and
just to living. That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
There's some social interactions which are really key to humanistic life that society needs, and I think that you as individuals do need, and I think people need to be aware of that on this over-reliance in a way. And I've noticed it even with changing it completely with kind of ChatGPT and things, of cooking, right? I love cooking, I do a lot of it, but I've started using ChatGPT because I can just throw things in it quickly and get me answers.
Quicker
and
than
I've
Google.
noticed way quicker, but I've also noticed my own over-reliance on it being correct is coming up more. And actually, I've got to the point in my own cooking which I mainly cook my own intuition. And I noticed it the other day where I was like, hold on a second. Like, I didn't even question that. I just
accepted it.
I've just accepted it what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing people need to be aware of, is that because these things are so well trained now, and we put this over-reliance on it being accurate in a way that you don't question it at all. I don't know whether you found similar.
Well, it's just, a little bit. And it's interesting because I think what you're speaking to there is a really unique human experience. So Daniel Kahneman, my favourite psychologist, big up Daniel. He talks about, obviously, System 1 and System 2, but one of the things he speaks prolifically about is that humans struggle with mental effort. And that sounds really bad. But basically, to put it in brass tacks terms, none of us like thinking too much. We go, that's too hard, I don't want to do that. And if we can get the easy option, we will. And sometimes, and this is something that's coming up a lot about de-skilling, that AI is de-skilling people, and we're over-reliant on it, we're overly trusting of it. Because effectively what we do is, what's the easy answer? I can Google it and look at 3 links, or I can just ask ChatGPT and get a summary. And
100%.
yeah, exactly. And I think we're falling into that we don't like mental effort category as human beings, and almost being taken away down a path that's really, really unhelpful. But we've spoken about a lot of negatives, and obviously we're trying to be balanced and impartial. I'm not impartial. I hate this thing. I think, honestly, get it away from me. Get the Matrix away from me. Unless AI becomes super powerful in the
Can't
future.
mention that word, Josh.
You're right. My bad. Sorry. I just want Neo to save me. Not the guy that sung Beautiful Monster.
But you're right. I think positives, and I think the big one, I kind of touched on it briefly earlier, but I'll expand a bit more, is that kind of, when you're in that low mood, stress or anxiety and your point of rumination, I think it can be a really useful tool to bounce something off, getting another perspective on it, particularly because it's going to give you that positive one, so it hopefully will bring you out of it. So I think it can be really useful for that. And one of the things I was playing with the other day is that I've been on the road now, as you know, in the van, kind of heading up through the Baltics and the Scandinavian countries for 6 weeks. And a lot have been going wrong with the van, and I was feeling a little low. And I kind of sat in my own thoughts and I went through my own thing. But I thought, we're going to do this episode. Let's see what it comes up with.
Yeah.
And it was useful in a way because it kind of, I asked it to ask me questions. So different in this way because I wanted it to prompt it, but it was like, well, what are some of the things that you've worked through? And then I talked about the fact that I actually managed to deal with a load of issues from the gas or the brakes and the heater. We've come a long way up the countries, blah blah blah. Long story short, it then took all what I fed it, regurgitated it, and was like, yeah, these all seem really hard, however, look at all these positives that you've achieved.
Yeah. Yes.
And that I can see where it's working in that level could be a big positive for a lot of people if you need that kind of quicker bit of just kind of prepping me up perspective. I think that can be one of the big benefits.
To me, it sounds like it was really good at reframing things in a way and offering kind of alternatives to your thinking. And I suppose my question from that, and it comes back to that Platoan idea, so Plato's idea of the cave, watching the shadows on the wall. If that had been from a person, let's imagine that had been from a person, do you think it would have been more or less effective than what the AI had done?
Definitely more effective from a human because I had to prompt it to ask me the questions, right? Because I knew what I was looking for. And I think that's the point, is when you're in some of these frames of mind, you don't know necessarily what you're looking for. And that's why you need the human interaction, right? Because the human interaction could go, I see you're low. I'm not going to just try and solve this problem for you. I'm maybe going to give you some reassurance first and then help you solve the problem. Yeah. Because if I come to you and I'm already burning in my head out, right?
I'm going to make it worse.
Infuriated.
I'm going to make it so much worse. I'll be like, no,
so true.
It's too late. It's over. Game over. Give up.
But it's true, right? That enemy, see, and I laughed immediately, right? And we know once you know someone, you also know how to handle that situation, right? With that individual. That, to me, what we just did there is what AI can't do.
I agree.
It can't bring that human element to it.
And I think that's a big part of it. And to me, when I think about all the social elements to AI at the moment, where people are using it, why they're using it, often I think it's because we feel like we're missing something in our locality immediately. And I suppose, if anything, this conversation might prompt someone listening to be like, actually, I'm overly reliant on here. Why do I think that is? So it's starting to ask yourself that question. Why am I using this so much? What's driving that? And actually, because I agree with you, that question wasn't supposed to be a leading question or a trip up. It was just more of an exploratory question, I suppose. Yeah. And it's thinking about, if I had gotten that from another human being, how would that have felt? And as you said, there's a humour to it. The AI is not going to crack a joke like we just cracked, even if it was really mean.
But it's not, and that's the point, right? Is that that's what I think humans do for each other, right? That's that well-being element that we need from a social construct. We've talked about this before, right? Where actually just picking up the phone and speaking to each other, your mood can immediately change. And I think for people, there will hopefully be people around you that you can reach out to. And if you can't, and you're at that point and you need it there and then maybe this tool, AI for that initial aspect is useful, right? But if you're really feeling down, and I think I'll just ground it a little more, right? There are proper professional tools out there like Mind and the Samaritans that if you are really feeling in a bad place, that you should reach out to.
Yeah.
I don't think we are, maybe we'll in the future, but I don't think we're anywhere near the point where people should be over-relying on this technology to help them.
From my personal experience and professional experience, I would not recommend one of these tools. And they'll say that to you as well. The tools themselves will say that to you. I wouldn't recommend one of these tools for clinical use. We're talking about well-being here, realistically. And yes, there's lots of interesting ideas that are being tested out, but ultimately, I wouldn't advise anyone using them. And I think someone that's gotten to know you will catch more of your emotional mood. They'll understand things. They'll be able to infer things from what you're saying that AI might not be able to do when you put it in black and white. And I've seen it used in a wide modicum of ways. I knew a person who once asked AI to basically read its text and see if it was being gaslit. And obviously AI turned around and went, oh yeah, you're 100% being gaslit. And it obviously that's debatable. I know, it's like we've just come into the house, turned on the TV and seen the movie Her playing. Do you know what I mean? People are kind of engaging in that sort of rhetoric and idea. It's a bit dystopian for me, is what I would probably say.
Dystopian's a good way of expressing it.
Yeah.
Have you found any other benefits or good things that you've found other than kind of what we've discussed?
I suppose, because I'm trying to be non-biased, but realistically, it can be fun. What can I say? It can be fun to use. And I think, I'm a bit of a nerd. If you can believe it. And I found loads of my old Pokemon cards, for instance. And I just went through the AI, ChatGPT, and another one, I can't remember now, and just took pictures and be like, rate this card for me. How much is it worth? Tell me about this card. And it's a small thing, but it's good. It had some access to knowledge. I assume was correct. I don't know, because I haven't had them professionally graded or anything like that. But it's a fun little thing to do. And I suppose another thing I've been doing is taking pictures of winged insects during the sort of summer, the height of the summer, and asking.
That is a nerdy activity. I love it.
It is. But I'll tell you what, it's really fun. Try it. Trust me, try it. And be like, tell me about this insect. Well, what is it? What's its name? I want its Latin name. I want all of that information. Tell me everything. And it will do that. And so that can be fun in those regards. Again, it comes back to the question of, is it more fun than taking the picture, looking up images of butterflies, or buying a book on dragonflies, and looking at whether it's worth it or not? That component. It may be, it may not be. I don't know. It's not for me to draw a conclusive decision. But that was something I noticed, that it could be good fun.
No, I think the fun bit, and I think that's a key thing actually as well. If from a mindfulness perspective, we talked about some people just enjoy scrolling, and if you want to do it for half an hour, fine, but just don't sit in it, right? As long as it's our content.
Only scroll our content. In fact, go onto AI right now and ask it to show you all of the Satori Sounds content. That's either ChatGPT, DeepSeek, or what was the other one from Twitter? Dork?
Gawk?
Oh, Gawk.
Gawk.
Dork. Risky name.
Gawk. It's Gawk. You got Copilot. Gemini is Google's one, I'm pretty sure, as well.
He's coming up with all these names. And I always wondered to myself as well, here's another thing that I suppose we could consider as a negative. Putting in a lot of information, sharing a lot of pictures. What's it doing with that? Who's it sharing that info with?
Yeah, well, and personal, that's what I find really interesting, is how, from speaking to friends and, my interaction, how easy it is to almost overshare, right? Like, you wouldn't overshare with certain people, and you just wouldn't, would you?
If you tell me any secret, I'm telling everyone immediately.
That's why I never tell you secrets.
Tell me your PIN. I need to know your PIN.
Live on broadcast, straight out. Oh no!
I'm gonna give your phone number out right now.
Beep. It's the over-reliance, right? Again, isn't it? It's just this over-reliance, over-trust. I think, I don't think I have really much to add on more on the positives. I think the fun. I think, if you're in a low mood, stressed, anxious, like you're feeling those things in the moment, and you've got no one else that you can immediately talk to, I do think it could be a effective tool in that sense. I think there is an opportunity longer term, with the right training from skilled professionals, particularly with the mental health crisis that we have, to be an initial form of triaging and supporting people. But from my perspective, and it's the human element that it really brings it back to, I don't think it can ever kind of replace that.
Yeah, and I think coming back to its practical uses, I'm not going to comment on whether it could be useful or it couldn't be useful. I'll let the the tech wizards and the clinical organisations thinking about implementing that decide. But I think there are some serious drawbacks, and I wouldn't advocate for its use particularly quickly. But obviously, you have to be nuanced. There will be times it'll be useful. There will be times that it won't be useful. And I think in that initial quick staging, what's the problem? Okay, here's a solution. Here's an immediate solution. And I suppose that's a positive. There is immediacy. You don't have to call it and wait for an answer. And I suppose it comes back to that attachment piece. Particularly if you've had difficult life experiences, some people might sit there and go, oh, I need something right now, and I need it. And people do get attached to things like that. And I suppose it's thinking about that in a broader sense. Is that helpful long term? I'm not going to say. I don't know.
Yeah, that's for individuals, isn't it? So
let's move on to the meaty part. I think we've covered a lot. There's so many different angles with which you can slice this. What would you give it as a rating? Oh, drum roll, please.
A+, best thing ever.
S. I've got rid of all my family and friends. I only use AI now.
From a well-being tool, let's frame like that, because that was the question we're posing here, right? Not a full-blown therapy or anything like that. From a well-being tool,
simple. Maybe, I don't know, you're bored or anything. It could be anything in that.
I'd put it in a C. I would say is my gut feel for that, and the reason I put it that low is for what we've kind of talked about, the fact that it's missing the human element. They're trained, etc. From what they're trained on, and the fact that they're always your cheerleader. That's, I think, can be risky from an over-reliance piece. But there are the benefits, right? That it does give you that immediacy. It can just prop you up if you're feeling a little down and you want a shallow response or a bit of fun. But I'd struggle. That's what I was reasoning myself. My gut immediately told me C, and I was trying to reason why I'd consider moving it up. But yeah, C. How about you?
I'm not going that high, unfortunately. It's just personally. Sorry, go on. What are you going to say?
No, I was just laughing.
Just laughing. I think realistically, I used that word earlier, dystopian, and it just feels absolutely bizarre to see it now, if that makes sense. So there's an element of that, and it makes me think of things like Nozick's critique of the experience machine, which is basically a philosopher a long time ago said, if we could plug people into a machine and it would generate pleasurable experiences and pleasurable experiences only, the majority of people would choose to live in reality. And actually, we're seeing it now. And this is almost like Nozick's pleasure machine, almost. And a lot of people, I think, will choose that short-term ease, comfort, assumption, pleasure. And those good things that we spoke about, the fun, the immediate responses, these are all great in the short term, I feel. But I think in the long term, they're going to cause you way more issues, particularly if you get used to talking to a machine over a person. And I just think about it from that sort of end of things.
Yeah, the over-reliance on it.
Not just the over-reliance, but it's also this idea of that you're just not in reality at that point. You're almost chasing a fantasy. And I suppose in the short term, those people feel lifted. They feel like their well-being is being improved, but it's not real. And I suppose with all that in mind, I would probably give it a solid D. I think it does more harm than good, personally. But that's not an objectively don't use AI, never use it. But it's more of a sense of actually, hold on a minute, this is a bit spooky.
No, I think it's fair. I think that shows, right? Neither of us are rating it very highly. I think people need to be aware of it and not be over reliant on it. And I think, but also experiment with it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Go and try and understand it. I think, because it's a bit with anything, right? The more you understand it, the better that you can make decisions, but just don't have the over reliance on it.
Yeah, and I mean, from my perspective, whenever we talk about AI, it makes me think about, and I've said it a few times in the podcast, it makes me think about the film Her, which if you haven't seen it with Joaquin Phoenix, go and watch it. but there's just loads of films and media content about kind of how AI is used, how humans build up a relationship with that tech, and I just think this is a cyberpunk nightmare. Get away from me.